I want to tell you about an idea, more than an idea, an actual proven solution that can make the world of philanthropy work better. Michael Porter, the Harvard Business School professor who wrote Competitive Strategy and who's one of the most influential minds in the business world, said this: "Billions are wasted on ineffective philanthropy. Philanthropy is decades behind business in applying rigorous thinking to the use of money." There are many reasons why this is true, such as free market forces don't drive the nonprofit sector, and that top talent is often attracted to the for-profit sector because it offers more lucrative careers. But it's also true that many talented and dedicated people are attracted to nonprofits. Some dedicate their lives to them, some do it as a second career. Either way, it's a good thing because the nonprofit sector is the front line in addressing some of the most critical and pressing problems, like hunger and poverty, education, and the environment. We need good people working to solve these problems, and we need for them to be successful. There are many challenges that face nonprofits, but I'm going to describe a particular problem that saps the energy and resources of the entire nonprofit community. I'm going to show an analysis of that problem that indicates a better way is possible. Then I'm going to show you a proven solution that makes things work much better and tell you how you can help make that solution available throughout the philanthropic community. Let's start with the problem. The philanthropic community breaks down into two groups of nonprofit organizations. There are people who have money and who want to do good. Sometimes these people are individual donors, but often their money is channeled through foundations. The second group is made up of people who spend their lives doing good, providing services to others, but who need money to continue doing so. These are the charities. Both foundations and charities qualify as nonprofit organizations. Foundations want to find charities that are working on the particular societal problems that they consider important. They also want to find organizations that will be good stewards of their money when they give it to them. Meanwhile, the charities know they have a better chance of getting money from foundations that care about the kinds of problems they solve, and that to get that money, they'll have to convince the foundations that they're a good investment. The place where these two groups come together is in the grant process, in the giving and receiving of grants. The foundations are typically called grant makers, and the charities are called grant seekers. The grant makers have a complex challenge. They need to allocate a scarce resource, their available funds, across a vast, worthy, and needy universe of charities. To do this, they collect information, and they collect it through customized grant application forms, which are often long and difficult to fill out. To be considered for a grant, a charity needs to fill this out and submit it in accordance with the published grant outlines. Of course, a foundation can't grant every request they receive, so they select the most worthy applications for funding. What percent of grant proposals is typically funded? That information is difficult to find. There's very little data available, but a few generalizations can be made. Foundations fall along a continuum. The small foundations, for example, those with assets under $250,000, receive fewer requests and grant a higher percentage of those requests. Grant sizes tend to be small, in the $1,000 to $5,000 range. In terms of number of grants, the largest number would fall at this end of the spectrum. At the other end of the spectrum are the large foundations, with assets over $250 million. They receive many requests, and consequently they grant a much smaller percentage. Grant sizes go from $5,000 and up into tens of thousands and even millions of dollars. Most grant dollars come from this end of the spectrum. Competing for this money are the grant seekers. They're often inexperienced at the art of writing grant proposals. They're experienced in providing the types of services they provide, but inexperienced at selling themselves to foundations. They're also usually short-handed and therefore time poor, so they have two choices for how to go about applying for grants. They can hire grant writers, or they can do it themselves. So what does a grant writer cost? This too is difficult information to come by. There are websites where you can find grant writers, but they don't publish much about their fees. They usually want you to call them. One such site does offer this ballpark information. A typical grant proposal will cost between $500 and $7,500, depending on the narrative length. Given this information, we can make a few observations. First, assuming a $100 an hour rate, writing a proposal will take somewhere between 5 to 75 hours, with 40 hours being average. Second, this is just the cost of writing the proposal. The charity is still responsible for providing the actual answers to the questions. Third, it's not cost-effective to hire a grant writer for requests under $10,000, which is where most grants fall. And $10,000 only makes sense if you actually get the grant. Given you probably have to write 3 or 4 proposals to get a single grant, the economics of hiring a grant writer are even more problematic. If the charity does hire a grant writer, it means there's less money available for the charity's work, and they may or may not get better results. That's because the writer is, in the end, just a writer. The proposal could only be as good as the plan behind it, and the charity is responsible for the plan. So what if the charity decides to do it themselves? How does grant writing work in a typical charity? The answer is it's a highly manual process. First, the charity has to find a like-minded foundation that's likely to look favorably upon their request. I could do another whole presentation on this topic alone, but all I'll say here is this. Even if the charity pays a subscription fee to database organizations that sell foundation search services, they still have to do a lot of manual vetting online to find a high-potential foundation. It's very time-consuming. Once they find a good target foundation, they have to review the online application form and begin to formulate their proposal. The charity does this by pulling answers to questions they've answered in the past from prior grant proposals. Then they craft answers to new questions they've not encountered before. This copying and writing is typically done by a single person in the organization or even a volunteer, because the rest of the organization is busy providing services with too few people and too little money. Then, because the charity has probably been assembling the proposal in a Word document, they might print it and mail it in, but more and more often they will have to cut and paste the answers into an online form the foundation has on its website. Finally, the charity will have to track their submissions, what's been sent, who they've heard back from, even follow up on their denials to learn what they can so they do better next time. Anyone who's ever been involved in a sales organization recognizes this for what it is, a sales pipeline. And like all sales pipelines, it's a numbers game. The number of grants a charity receives is based on the number of proposals they submit and the acceptance rate they experience. If we combine our prior estimate of 40 hours per proposal, which is conservative because remember that was just for writing the proposal, and we need to add on time for prospecting and tracking. With a 25% acceptance rate, that's 1 month of someone's time for each grant received. If that grant is only for $1,000 or $5,000, the charity needs a lot of grants to be viable. Even for a small charity, managing the grant process is a full-time job. But most small charities can't afford to dedicate a full-time person to this activity. Any way you look at it, managing the grant proposal process means less time available to work on the charity's mission, and not having the expertise to present their work in the best possible light means the charity may not get the funding they deserve. Let's analyze the situation to find a solution that will work for both parties, the foundations and the charities. Things start out fine. The needs of the two groups are well aligned. What they need is a matchmaker to help them find each other. They share common goals. Both want to solve important problems, and they want to do so efficiently and effectively. The problem is the current process they go through to find each other and allocate resources. An engineer or an economist would say there's a lot of friction in the current grant-making process, and every bit of energy that's lost to that friction, whether it's time or money, is a waste in a system that's already short on resources. When you see what a charity currently goes through to submit grant proposals, it's not surprising they only do it because they have to. They feel like they're jumping through hoops to get the funding they need for survival. They see no value in the process beyond that. The opportunity here is to make grant seeking both easier and more valuable in a way that helps charities get better at solving the problems that motivate them, better at achieving their missions. Is this even possible? We've conducted some market research that indicates it is. We've done a review of a series of grant applications from large foundations and associations of grant makers. Here's what we found. First, while every grant application form is different, the questions they ask share a lot of common ground. After reviewing only 10 forms, we found a set of information items that meet the needs of most foundations. Of course, each foundation asks for a different subset of information in a different order, but very few new items show up in each successive application form we reviewed. That's good news. Second, the content of the pool of questions we identified is genuinely valuable information and consistent with good business planning. The types of things grant makers want to know are related to things like planning, accountability, measurement, and continuous improvement. All of these are beneficial to charities, and all are essential to being good stewards of the grant money they want to receive. Doing these things will make them better problem solvers. So a mutually beneficial solution is indeed possible, and we've built a fully functional web application to prove it. The solution is to help charities do good business planning, to do it first, and not just as a requirement for getting funding. Then, use technology to automate the generation of grant proposals. We do that by recording the information requirements of each foundation, and then configuring the planning content to meet each foundation's needs. And grant proposals aren't the only things we can automatically generate from the planning content. We can configure many other useful communication pieces for the charities as well. Let's see how this works. The solution starts with an online planning tool where charities can do their business plans tailored to meet both the management needs of the charities and the information needs of potential grant makers. The truth is, creating a good business plan is not a writing exercise as much as it is a thinking exercise. Creating a good business plan is a challenging but rewarding undertaking. In the nonprofit planning template, there's a page dedicated to the strategic plan of the overall organization. It contains traditional information about the organization's mission, the populations it serves, its goals and its strategies for achieving them. But it also asks questions like, how are the populations served involved in the work of the organization? In other words, how do the people who are helped give back? This thought-provoking question is in the plan because one smart foundation asks it in their grant application form. There's a page of financials. It covers prior year, current year, and next year. It has revenues and expenses, budget and actual, with categories that fit nonprofit activities like fundraising. It also asks about unexpected events that have impacted the numbers, like fundraising events that have been discontinued by community groups or large donors that have scaled back due to the recession. And then there's one page for each of the programs or projects the charity executes. A program page called General Operating Support is automatically generated for each plan because every charity writes grant requests for ongoing operational support. But the charity then can add a page for each of their major programs, and in this way the plan is customized to their unique set of offerings. These program pages act as the marketing and operating plans and focus on questions related to resource management, communication strategies, measurement, and results. An interesting section here asks for stories the charity can use to promote a given program. This question comes from a foundation that understands the importance of stories in winning hearts and minds, which is what needs to happen before people open their wallets. Foundations want to invest in programs that will be successful. We're testing this plan in a pilot program with 5 charities. We're keeping the initial number of charities small so I can act as a coach, helping them to think through the answers as well as interact with the tools. As the charity develops its plan, it's saved to their local computer or network, so security is not an issue. They're collaborating with one another to build one shared, comprehensive plan, but there are 3 different ways the people within the charity can interact with it. For people who like a more visual interface, there's a note view where the planner can click on a box, fill in the answers, and then the note is outlined in green to show it's complete. This view is great for a visual overview of the structure of the plan and its state of completeness. For the more text-oriented planner, there's an outline view of the same model, and it does everything you'd expect an outline to do. It expands and contracts. You can pin sections to the top of the page to make it easier to focus on that particular section. And like the note view, you get color-coded visual cues to show what's completed and what remains to be done. In both the note view and the outline view, you can type things in or you can cut and paste from other documents. And finally, for those who are not yet comfortable working with a web application, the first version of the plan can be written in a Word document and imported into the planning model. Ongoing modifications, however, should be done directly in the planning system. Charities need to become comfortable with the online tools because that's where the next bit of magic happens. That's the automated generation of grant proposals. This is where all the good thinking that was done up front in the planning process saves the charity time and effort on the back end. When the charity wants to generate a grant, they pick their target foundation from a list of foundations whose requirements have been documented in the system. This list will grow over time, and the first foundations entered will be driven by the needs of the first charities to use the planning system. For each grant proposal, the charity selects either general operating support or one of the programs they've added to the plan, and then enters a short list of grant-specific information such as the amount of money requested and the request date. When they hit OK, the system generates a grant proposal customized to meet the target foundation's requirements. A header is generated for each question in the foundation's application form, along with the charity's answers from their business plan. If a particular item has not been filled out in the plan, a header will be there, but the answer will be blank. The charity can then choose whether or not to fill in the necessary information. Any new answers can be filled out in the business plan and the proposal regenerated. This approach means a charity does not have to fill out everything at once, and the plan can be developed in a just-in-time fashion if necessary, though developing answers within a cohesive planning process is preferred. The generated proposal can be opened in Microsoft Word or another word processing application and reviewed and refined as necessary. Then it can be printed and mailed, or as is often the case for larger foundations, the answers will still need to be cut and pasted into the foundation's online form. But even with the need for this last manual step, the time saved by generating the proposal is dramatic, saving days of effort for each grant proposal. If we think back to our grant-seeking pipeline equation, it's clear how this approach will help. The ease and speed of generating proposals will increase the number of grant requests a charity can make. But equally, and perhaps more importantly, the fact that there's only one best version of the answers that can be the result of collaboration among many people in the charity, not just the work of an individual charged with writing grants. That fact will increase the quality of the responses and hopefully the acceptance rate. And these two factors together should significantly impact the number of grants received. This approach can benefit more than just the grant-seeking process. The content of a well-crafted business plan has many other uses as well. The same approach can be used to generate nicely formatted business plans or 2-page executive summaries to give to board members. It can generate 1-page handouts for volunteers, or program descriptions for potential donors or community partners. It could even be used to generate websites. Really, our imaginations are the only limit here. And this is only the beginning. My vision is to create a community where the key players in philanthropy can meet and share resources seamlessly. Charities will come here to find foundations and even individuals who share their missions and priorities. They'll come for unprecedented planning support that improves their effectiveness and automation tools that improve their efficiency. Foundations will come to get the information they need to make smart funding decisions. They'll have access to not only the questions they've historically asked, but also insightful questions that have been asked by other foundations. They'll no longer need to develop and maintain their own online submission systems, yet they'll still control the types of information they receive. They'll also be able to monitor the results of grants they've given through automation tools similar to the proposal generator. All of the conversation we've had about grant makers so far has been based on foundations that accept unsolicited proposals. There's another sizable group of foundations that do not accept unsolicited proposals and who focus their giving on a predefined set of nonprofits. Sometimes this is because the foundation was created for that specific purpose, but often it's because the foundation does not have the capacity to manage the grant proposal process. These foundations will also find value in this community because they can seek out information about like-minded charities at their own speed and on their own terms. This changes the interaction model from a push model, where charities send requests to foundations, to a pull model where foundations extract the information they need to make funding decisions. This makes it possible for small and understaffed foundations to find new charities to support without being overwhelmed by the grant-making process. And finally, the community will have a third and very important group of participants. I call them the coaches. This is a role I'm currently filling in the pilot program. Unlike a grant writer who provides an ongoing service for a fee, the goal of a coach is to help a charity become independent. I believe this need can be met by a huge new resource becoming available to help the philanthropic sector, and that's a cohort of semi-retiring baby boomers who are ready and able to give back to society. These professionals will bring a wealth of skills and experience, not only to the business planning process, but to the actual problem-solving challenges the charities face. The community will provide potential coaches with training on the planning and automation tools, and with information about local charities and foundations that need their help. All of these resources will make the community a better matchmaker than the current grant proposal process. Both collaboration and technology become force multipliers that will make philanthropy work better. And in my vision, no charity will ever have to pay to belong to this community. I don't know that this ideal is possible, but it is my goal. So what actions can you take to make this vision a reality? What we've done so far is the situation analysis I've described here today and the market research that has made the grant generator possible. We've built fully functional prototypes of the planning system and the proposal generator. We've taken it as far as we can take it in our spare time. To realize the vision I've described, we need your help. We need resources to build out the rest of the website, including additional automation tools. We need to add foundations and their requirements to our database. And we need to get the community up and running, including a communications effort to build awareness of the community and what it has to offer. In my experience, though, it's not difficult to recruit charities. They are desperate for this help. There are 2 ways you can help us create this vision. If you're interested in helping people who help people, and you think the vision I've described has merit, if you have money to invest in philanthropy, and would like to see that money leveraged across the whole community rather than selected charities, then please contact me at deborah@nponetwork.com, and we can start a discussion about how you can be involved. But just as importantly, if you want to help and you know someone else who has money to invest and who would be interested in making philanthropy work better, please forward the link to this presentation to them and let them know you think these ideas have merit. If we put our networks to work, we can get this done. I started with a quote by Michael Porter, and I'll end with a quote from Bill Gates. He said, "Effective philanthropy requires a lot of time and creativity, the same kind of focus and skills that building a business requires." He's right. Here's a concrete opportunity for those of us who have had great good fortune in our lives to give back. We can do so by combining our business skills, experience, and resources with the dedication and knowledge of people who have devoted their lives to helping others. Working together is our best chance to make progress against the serious and intractable problems facing society. Let's build a community where coming together is easy, where resources flow smoothly towards the problems to be solved, and all of our energy can be focused on making the world better.